In 1857, the United States Supreme Court made a decision that would shock the nation and push the country closer to civil war. At the center of that decision was a man named Dred Scott. Dred Scott was born into slavery around 1799. Like millions of other enslaved people in America, he had no legal rights, no control over his future, and no protection under the law. But Scott's life would eventually lead to one of the most controversial court cases in American history. In the 1830s, Scott was owned by an Army surgeon named Dr. John Emerson. Because Emerson served in the military, Scott traveled with him to several different locations. One of those locations would change everything. Scott was taken to Illinois and later to the Wisconsin Territory, both places where slavery was illegal. For years, Scott lived and worked in territories where, according to the law, slavery was not allowed. Eventually, Scott returned to Missouri. But the time he spent in free territory planted an idea in his mind. What if that time had made him legally free? In 1846, Dred Scott made a bold and dangerous decision. He sued for his freedom. With the help of abolitionist lawyers, Scott argued that because he had lived in free territory, he should no longer be considered a slave. At first, the case seemed hopeful. Scott initially won in a lower court. The decision suggested that living in free territory had indeed made him a free man. But the victory didn't last long. The ruling was overturned, and the case eventually made its way to the highest court in the nation, the United States Supreme Court. By the time the case reached the court, the country was already deeply divided over the issue of slavery. Many Americans were watching closely, knowing the decision could shape the future of the nation. In 1857, the court delivered its ruling. The decision stunned the country. Chief Justice Roger Taney declared that Dred Scott was not a citizen and therefore had no right to sue in federal court. But the ruling went even further. The court declared that people of African descent, whether enslaved or free, could never be citizens of the United States. According to the ruling, Black Americans had no rights that white citizens were bound to respect. The court also declared that Congress had no authority to ban slavery in federal territories. This meant slavery could legally expand into territories where it had previously been restricted. The reaction across the country was explosive. In the North, many people were outraged. Abolitionists condemned the ruling as immoral and unjust. In the South, slaveholders celebrated the decision as a major victory. The ruling deepened the divide between North and South and intensified the national debate over slavery. Historians today often describe the Dred Scott versus Sandford decision as one of the worst Supreme Court rulings in American history. Instead of settling the slavery issue, it poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Just 4 years later, that fire would erupt into the American Civil War. Ironically, Dred Scott himself would not remain enslaved forever. In 1857, shortly after the Supreme Court decision, Scott and his family were finally freed by the family that owned him. But the legal battle that carried his name had already changed the course of American history. The Dred Scott decision became a powerful reminder of how the law could be used to uphold injustice and how deeply divided the nation had become. Today, the case remains one of the most important and controversial moments in the history of the United States Supreme Court. It is a reminder that the fight for freedom and equality has often been long, difficult, and unfinished. And it all began with one man who dared to challenge a system that denied him his humanity. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Voices of History for more untold historical stories that shape the world.